Let me tell you something about war. War ain't always about fighting. Blood, bullets, death, yeah, that's part of it. But it sure as hell ain't all of it. Sometimes, it's about knowing when to turn tail and run your fucking ass off.
This is it, people! Saddle up!
Storm's about to hit.
For many years and a few different videos now, I've been very focused on Gears of War. I mean, this was one of, if not the first series I played all the way through. But often I shit on the games just as often as I'll load them up. So what does this series have that always brings me back to it? Starting in 2006, the Gears of War franchise set the bar for third-person shooters and combined aspects of brutality in a series like Warhammer, the atmosphere of cheeky horror thriller like Resident Evil was, and the humanity and diversity in characters from a game like Team Fortress. None of these comparisons make sense on the surface, but the DNA is there. At the beginning, these games were blatantly masculine. From the chunky armor and permanently furrowed brow of Marcus Phoenix to the literal chainsaw gun that cut lizard people in half. Star-spanking new thriller shooter, or a 10-year-old me playing with Legos. They're not too different if you ask me. But as the series evolved, so did the world. Gears of War 2 brought in epic scales and dozens of enemies. With Gears 3 we get a better look at these characters as their hearts opened up. Gears of War Judgment chased some trends, but it also tried a few new things, failing in execution but still brings the Gears DNA in a semi-modernized formula. Gears of War 4 was a spiritual revival that the series desperately needed after the last two entries didn't do much but remind people that Gears existed, Judgment and Ultimate Edition, which I didn't really mention, but it existed and it didn't really do anything. 4 builds further on the gameplay and makes it flow better on a modern console while introducing RPG class-based combat to Horde mode, doing what Judgment tried, but in a better way. Gears 5 is the most decisive game, but close to my favorite when I actually played it. After all the tunings, it still feels smooth, looks gorgeous, and runs like a dream on the Xbox Series X/S, with their stupid-ass naming conventions. The greatest letdowns for Gears 4 and 5 happen to be their treatments of the series' atmosphere, story, and world, trivializing the world into a much less interesting fanfiction than a true continuation of the series. Gears Tactics does the same to muddy the water of Ceres history and tales of creatures underground with massive legs long before the cog even existed become tall tales. But beyond that, it does a great job at introducing Gears of War to a tactical, turn-based RPG with cool classes, custom units, interesting characters that fit right in with the already existing universe. And lastly, Gears Pop! The best Gears of War game of all time. On the surface, Gears of War is exactly what it looks like. Big, muscled men, chainsaws, brutal executions, chunky armor, and epic, spicy laser beams. But once you spend some time in that world, in the books, in the comics, or with the community of passionate fans who, like myself, continue to pour hours of effort into raging on about what, where, and why they love about the series, Gears of War becomes less a story about mind-numbing soldiers and more about the people that exist underneath that armor.
I gotta be there for him. Sleep tight, sweetheart.
Like all of the biggest fans of Gears, I was introduced to Gears of War through somebody else. It was my first M-rated game, and became very influential to this day about my preferences for armor customization and just general style in games, or my enjoyment of third-person anything over first-person shooters or especially isometric type games. I first played Gears sometime around the 2nd grade, which is a bit young. Gears of War 2, a game that looked awesome on the 360 and even better in the modern day. I played the whole campaign through with my dad, who himself had been introduced to the games by another friend of his. Then we moved backwards onto Gears of War 1, playing all the way through and struggling with Rom at the very end. Yeah, he's not bad now, but for a 9-year-old, it was a Herculean task to get that shit done. A few years of nothing but after-school nights of jumping between LEGO Star Wars 3 and Gears 2 Horde, or even a few matches of Warzone against nothing but bots. Eventually, the next entry came to light, Gears of War 3, the emotional ending to a trilogy half a decade old at this point. It looked amazing, it still does. It played the best, it had more weapons, more guns, more heroes. Beast mode. Horde mode with so much more added on top. Rom's Shadow, which gave you the power of the literal Horde, a campaign that was cinematic, punchy, well-paced with varied environments, a brand new type of enemy with new mechanics, the tensest boss fight as you desperately try to shoot the glowy train in the chest, which truly horrified me as a kid, and today I still think it's one of the best boss fights in the whole series, even coming up to the more modern games with their more advanced mechanics. Gears of War 3 took everything from the series that had come before and just improved upon it. Marcus was angrier, Tom was sadder, Cole was sportsier, Baird was blonder. Everything was moved up, and they even managed to get Ice-T on the roster.
You can count on that, bitch!
Because he too is a massive fan of Gears. This was the first game in the series I beat on the insane difficulty, and it was well worth it too. Years from here of playing Gears 3 Versus in Beast Mode with friends of mine, brothers and cousins, everyone was welcome to Bayonet, Berserker Smash, and lose in a Nasher duel against myself. But for a moment after the next gen, or 8th generation, now the old gen, had come around, my time with the series slipped away. I moved on to Fallout 4, Mad Max, Just Cause, lots of other fun third-person action and shooter games to hold me over, and then they came. Gears of War 4. I played the beta. Then as a freshman in high school, I saved up and bought the Ultimate Edition. Day and night. Got through the campaign fast and loved it. It was gorgeous, it was dramatic. The Swarm were new and feral. The DBs were a totally new type of enemy who functions not dissimilar from the Lambent who came before, but were still fresh and exciting for something that Gears had not seen before. The Lancer got an awesome facelift. The multiplayer was smoother and better than ever. Of course, in the competitive scene, it fluctuated as the tuning constantly changed, but at its best, it was really fun. I felt the need to play often, and while the grubby loot system was grindy at best and downright abusive at the worst, it was manageable enough that I could suffer through and just enjoy playing the game. CQC additions to the cover combat gave duels depth for kicking over enemies or pulling a knife on someone rather than relying solely on the Nasher popping over cover. Skills in Horde took the place of mutators from before, allowing for some truly fun solo runs, which sometimes, most of the time, I just preferred doing than having a full team with me for 50 ways of Horde. Gears of War 4 was probably the first time I ever truly tried to rank up in a competitive game, reaching Onyx 3 at my peak, and always just one game off from putting myself in Diamond, but never able to grind myself into that final tier. After the intro to this new iteration of Gears worked so well through most of my high school years, I was incredibly hyped for Gears 5. They dropped the of War? Sure, why not? JD looks beefier, like he's got something going on. Escape looks like fun. I love the idea of a low resource dungeon crawling in Gears. The campaign looked grand in scale just like Gears of War 2 and 3 were, and as if we're going to delve deeper into the origins of the still mysterious Locust at the time. Then the game launched. Half the roster on the Conk team day one weren't even Gears characters. So many shoehorned characters from Halo and Terminator were just thrown into the mix. The campaign was underwhelming, and it felt like it was trying to use nostalgia to gaslight me into liking it more. It undoes the character arcs of Paddock, Marcus, Kate, and JD in several ways and pretends that they've evolved. The ending was incredibly contrived. See this other video that I made about the entire choice at the end of that if you want further whatever on my thoughts about how fucking stupid that whole thing was. The co-op was buggy and broken more than once in the Tour of Duty, which in all fairness is 100 times more consumer friendly than any other battle pass on the market. Still spits in the face of the fans who wanted the unlocked characters that you earn by completing the hardest challenges in the game, but still insistently poked us in the face saying, see, we did it, man, from the developers. So let's go there next. the devs.
Play on PC with it as well.
Yeah. Also available
Oh yeah.
is the.
It felt like the Coalition were trying to win a losing battle. Fans of the series often get caught up in the past and struggle to move on, but it's hard to do when the new stuff is just bad. The game is gorgeous, but it doesn't have any of the art direction that the older games had. 4 rides that line, and Tactics comes close, but Gears 5 is almost overexposed in a lot of places. It's almost too clean. Gore and viscera is left behind for flashy effects and albeit some great sound design, but it doesn't feel the same all the way through.
Now, I am revive me! Nice!
Depth in weapons that attacked differently, such as the retro and the torque bow, lost that complexity as every single melee in the game was swapped for this wet slap of a combat knife. Escape is fun, but Horde and Escape feature exactly what Judgment had done, and that Gears 4 was smart enough to avoid, merging classes with characters. Not only did this slow their release of fan favorites, but it also limited people from playing what they want, how they want, and it felt like the game was constantly taking half a step forward and then 3 steps backwards. On top of an arcade game mode featuring CSGO-inspired weapon picks, and the same character-locked class abilities with an emphasis on ranged combat, something that flew in the face of most casual and competitive players alike, who tended to prefer the faster pace of wall bouncing and Nasher duels in the PvP. The entire skill ceiling was brought down, and it kind of spat in the face of the people who were here and dedicated to the game, because it just catered to a more casualized audience instead. To their credit, Gears 5 has rolled back and adjusted many of these poor implementations at the cost of the game's expansion. Instead of getting loads of new stuff, new classes, better new maps, the Coalition was so focused on playing catch up with the audience that they had to devote an entire operation in order to remedy what they had broken. And unlike Operation Health, say in Rainbow Six Siege, Gears 5 only went for 8 or 9 operations. It stopped getting support just about 2 years after launch, and that's been it. It's been dead silent since 2021. By the time that Hivebusters had come out, one of the better campaign experiences from all of Gears, and the fixes to PvP, PvE, and everything else had been fixed, it was too late. Gears 5 had run its course, and in less time than Gears of War 4 had done, the 5th game had anything else cancelled, except for some even more out of place character crossovers, of course, because this is what people wanted.
Oh, geez, sorry.
Thankfully, the fanbase is passionate about these games. You can still find open matches of multiplayer in Gears of War 2, 3, 4, even Judgment on a good day. Of course, 5 is still relatively alive during the day, and Gears Tactics is one of, if not the best game in the series with what I think is really striking turn-based strategy that makes for a fun, varied experience. There's enough people who still love these games as I do, to the point where if you wanted to find a 4-stack of people to play Gears of War 3 just for the achievements alone, you could probably very easily find a group of people willing to hop on with you just to play that game for the hell of it. Whether it's an Xbox is looking for group or the Gears of War Discord server now that the forums are shut down. And my advice, if you're interested in playing Gears and you haven't touched this series at all before, play the campaigns with a friend. As somebody who's done each and every campaign in a full stack, or just with one person, or with my dad, or just by myself, playing with a good friend of yours is the best way to experience these games. Then from there, get into Horde or PvP or Escape or anything extra from there. Gears to me is a lot like Mario. Of course you could play it by yourself, but it only gets better with the more friends you have to sit down and play through it with. It's really a great couch co-op game, even today. Don't worry about the story, don't worry about the lore, just play the game with friends and find something to love about these games from there. Gears is not complicated and it never has to be, but it's great at one thing: it truly is the king of co-op in my opinion. And all the games are on Xbox Game Pass, able to be played on PC with cloud gaming for the old 360 titles, and every older game is upscaled to 60 FPS and 1080p on the next gen series of Xbox consoles. So you know, there's no excuse not to play these games at the best way they've ever looked of all time.
Main gate. Keep anything else from getting inside.
You realize I'm the ranking officer here, right?
And we'll reinforce Carmine at the town hub.
Gears of War is a fun series that harkens back to an older age of games with a solid enough story built for couch co-op. It has been integral to the development of third-person shooters in the 7th generation and made itself separate from every other military shooter by introducing a Warhammer-esque diesel punk world with Greco-Gothic look right on top of that. While some of the arduous tertiary details are missed in the modern games, they're still fun in their own ways, with a set of unique ideas that makes them worth the boot up and play with a set of friends, at least. A cast of unique characters and voice actors who brought these grumpy soldiers to life and breathed an air of freshness into a landscape of solitary Master Chiefs and fucking Skyrims. So many Skyrims! Why do they keep releasing this game? It doesn't make any sense to me. Starfield is gonna suck. Fuck you. Easily accessible today on Game Pass through PC or an Xbox with loads of content to dive into for you and your friends alike. These games have a lot to offer anyone who missed them the first time around. Gears is simple, but that's not a bad thing, because it's good at what it does and what it sets out to do. All of this is why I love Gears of War. Hello. This is the end of the video. I expect people are just going to click off here. If you haven't noticed, the text bubbles that are kind of around in the video and right here are actual words recorded from the Gears of War community. I sent out a post called Why I Love Gears of War, and I gave my initial reason. Basically, it was this script, but 4 years ago. And I asked people on the Gears of War forums originally to give me their responses, and later in a Gears of War Discord. So yes, everybody who gave their words and felt the availability to tell me why you love Gears of War, thank you very much. And to everybody who's watched this video up till now, thank you a whole lot. This series means a lot to me, and I just hope if I can inspire one person to pick them up and maybe, I don't know, play through the very first tutorial prison part in the beginning of Gears of War 1 and then be like, it's not my type, and then they turn it off, that's alright. Just try it. Won't hurt nothing. Anyways, I've rambled for too long. Thank you very much for watching. Remember to stay cool, have fun, and be awesome. And I'll see you next time.